The bridge has a story of its own out there. Sometimes when you're on the bridge, you can feel that. You can feel that there's a very old structure there and has a lot of stories.
The bridge has artistic values as well as transportation values, and it has inspired lots of artists, really good artists like Mike Berger here, to paint it and to paint it in different settings. But I like this one because it captured the one whole span of the bridge.
One evening, there was a full moon, and as we approached the bridge, the moon was rising and looked like it was caught in the superstructure of the trusses. And for me, it was absolute poetry. You don't often get that dramatic of an interplay between the natural world and the built world that makes you stop in your shoes and go, "Ah, look at that."
So the Van Buren Bridge was one of the first large bridges built in Oregon that was intended to last. It was a county's, which was a big deal as well at the time. And so it was integral to this community developing because they needed a way to get to the other side of the valley.
We still see communities separated by the Willamette River. That's the structure that did it, you know. And it becomes more than just a bridge, it becomes an entity.
What I love about this bridge in particular is it really was an outgrowth of the community recognizing the need and then finding the way to fund it. And this is right after women's suffrage.
In 1913, it was the first time women were allowed to vote, and we helped pass the bill to get the money to build the bridge.
It was a significant event.
There's the DOE that I couldn't find. The determination of eligibility for the National Register that has all these cool historic views of the bridge. All this great information that was done to prove how significant the bridge is. But this is the one, I love this one. This is the one that shows all the cars that are coming to town to go to the OSU football game. The date was 1915.
The Coast Bridge Company was brought in to design this bridge. They are a fascinating outfit. They were in that space of bridge company as shyster a little bit, like they would sell you bridges that might be okay for the job, but they would kind of maybe pull the wool over your eyes. So this bridge also kind of, in a way, begot ODOT, because we looked at this bridge in hindsight in 1913 and said, man, this bridge is actually, you know, you got a lot less bridge than you should have for the money you paid and what have you.
The Coast Bridge Company was particularly notorious for this. They'd come into these counties and ask them, would you like to build a bridge somewhere? Their influence resulted in at least 3 counties that had major corruption scandals, one of which involved the recall of the entire county commissioners and 1 county judge, all of whom were bribed by the Coast Bridge Company. That was in Eastern Oregon. They got recalled because they'd ordered 12 bridges from the company that were just sitting in a field. One county in Washington, they didn't accept the bribes. It ended up resulting in the arrest of John Whitlock and of one of his engineers. That corruption, that system that they had, resulted in the first report. A big chunk of that report is about why they're creating this department, and why they're doing it is to help the counties. That story was hugely important to why we have a state highway department.
It was designed with the intent of possibly having train go over it. So if you looked at bridges of that era that were steel bridges, they would be a lot lighter in construction. What would cross that bridge originally would be horse and buggy, people on horses, obviously people just walking. There obviously were cars by 1913, right? And so there were also, vehicular traffic at that time. So It served a variety of needs.
The fact that something that was designed for heavy freight wagons to still be functional is actually a testament to the fact that they designed it for a streetcar, not for that. We just got lucky in this case that they had designed for more than that. Bridges mean connection, and that's connection both in physical place and also in time and into history.
Their connections to communities, to families, to towns across the river from each other. They are elemental to kind of how we get across the landscape.
I think of all the students whose lives were changed because they came to OSU. They were coming from rural locations. They'd never been to, let's say, a bigger town like Corvallis at the time. So it has opened the door and been a gateway for a long, long time.
The structure has a history and a story that you can feel if you're on this bridge. When you ride a bike across it, the wood plank rattle when you roll across. I love it.
You're in the middle of the river, standing on the bridge, and you're able to look up the river or down the river and see all the beautiful trees and people boating, all kinds of things. From the very inception of any idea, the planners need to focus on what's important to the community and what they value, and not just go for something new to replace the old.
They've had to deal with this dilemma of how do you make sure that people can still access your town, but you also want to keep this what is often a very iconic piece of your history. It's about considering whether you can find a different location for them. Can you move it someplace else where people can use it as a pedestrian bridge, for instance, or as a venue? We have some covered bridges that are used as like wedding venues. Or can we find other uses for them?
And then what are the options to building a new city hall or a new bridge? You don't have to knock down the historic one necessarily. This is the way we would have it be a pedestrian bicycle bridge with people walking on the bridge without any automobiles. So this was our inspiration for mock-up for that.
There's some that are still like they just built a new bridge next to it. And then we have some where they've even done things where they replaced the entire floor system with pre-stressed concrete slabs. So the bridge can still function as a bridge. The trusses are just there as decoration. As an engineer, I kind of find that amusing and entertaining. As a historian, it's really disturbing.
Some people think it's ugly. I, for some reason, think it's great. It's like a big erector set, and the way it's built is just incredible. It's an incredible feat of engineering.
And there's the historic drawing of it. And there's a pin connected area.
So the thing with the pin connections, it's kind of like an erector set. That's what made the bridge efficient, was that the components could be made elsewhere and then brought here and assembled. So that made it thrifty.
This whole process has been very painful to me and to our group, Preservation Works, which has been working for 5 or 6 years to try very hard to save this bridge. So I've been really disappointed in our current leadership because they didn't fight for the bridge.
My involvement began in 2004 when a stakeholders committee was convened, and at the end of the process, the conclusion was that the Van Buren Bridge needed to be saved for a bike ped crossing, and that a new bridge needed to be built adjacent to it that would be more resilient. After that, I wrote a nomination to the National Register of Historic Places for the bridge. and it was approved as eligible. So I thought I had saved the bridge. The other thing that was going on is the bridge is getting blamed for traffic, that changing the Van Buren Bridge, removing it, wouldn't solve the traffic problem at all. So here we are fighting a perception, which is often much more difficult to do than fighting an actual issue.
Coast bridges are subjected to marine environment, to salt, in the air and what have you. So we did essentially as high quality a paint job as one could do, and sort of approaching to all the members. So we gave it, I think, as much life as this particular bridge could have. But the challenge for us on a historical level is, at what point is the bridge still the bridge? When you add so much redundancy to a bridge to where it no longer is functioning as the bridges as originally were designed, it starts to lose any kind of historical importance.
The issues with the Van Buren Bridge specifically are really to do with that timber deck. Right now, we've had issues with corrosion in the past, and there are some repairs on the steel from that last paint job, but the paint job itself is holding up reasonably well right now. But the timber deck, because of its rot problems that it's having right now, have resulted in the load restrictions on the bridge. And that load restriction is hugely problematic for the community, the people driving agricultural loads across the bridge. Right now just can't do that. And they also can't take the fire truck across it. It fails that security test.
We talked to everybody in the whole world about how to save it, and it basically got trumped by safety.
We looked at how do we continue this bridge into the future and look at it as a seismically stable bridge, the amount of redundancy and the doubling up of members and what have you, it starts to not look like the bridge it was once built to be. That also brings in the question of how much life do you get out of a bridge of this age to begin with? I mean, it really, in its current purpose, it really had served its life as fully as possible. The DOT kind of went through all these exercises as part of those laws that say, hey, you need to really consider alternatives before you take out a historic resource. And so that process was slow and challenging and sort of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So we looked at the opportunity of keeping it in its current place, and that didn't make sense because, again, the amount of improvements we would make, the limited to single lane still, the lack of its historicity at the end of all these improvements didn't make sense.
Well, if we don't understand what we've done in the past, we may not be able to survive in the future. We have to learn from our technology how to make things better or how to make things less worse.
To me, this bridge will have a very successful conclusion because of that. You got the right contractor, you got the right designer, you've got the right bridge selection. You can't beat that.
Well, I can say that the new bridge has some features, like I guess there are going to be some, is it intaglio in the concrete? You know, symbols of the indigenous people.
Everyone wanted to have a solution. The new bridge, of course, won't look like the old bridge. However, there was a lot of input from the community and actually from the tribes, quite frankly, who wanted to help the bridge reflect its location as a crossing over a body of water that's been here long before Euro-Americans. You know, we're considering the fact that the bridge was what we consider part of this historic district, right? So it was a member of this community of historic properties. And so we wanted the new addition to sort of fit within the old. That's kind of the spirit of that. But the reality is, I think some of the things we're doing as a upshot of the loss of the bridge are amazing, right? I mean, in terms of taking the old moving mechanism and making that into some sort of sculptural art for the community to understand that there was this moving bridge, to take the old pony truss and sort of talk about the fact that this is how bridges used to be. There used to be these steel bridges, and of course this will be a new concrete bridge. They're not made to last forever, right? They had a lifespan at the outset. So figuring out that balance, I think, is really important. I think we can learn that there's a lot of voices in the community that need to be heard and aren't often heard enough.
To paraphrase Ruskin, the past is not ours to destroy. The past is ours to take care of for the future. So it's a heavy burden. So in a world where our culture is all homogenized, our architecture has been mallized, if you will, it's the historic resources that differentiate one place from another.
I'm looking forward to seeing how the bridge comes together. Like you said, I think there's a lot of great design elements. It doesn't atone for the loss. I fully understand that, but it at least will speak to a different bridge of this era and then hopefully be around for 100 years or so.
I'm really pleased about the First Nations being represented in the panels on it. And I'm sure that there's camas, I'm sure that there's wapato, tarweed, but I'm not certain of all the subject matter on the panels, but it will be very different from the Van Buren Bridge.
I'll be real happy with this new bridge. It's a very nice bridge they're putting in. It's an excellent design. I think it's designed by Dow out of Eugene. They designed a good bridge. Hamilton puts together a good bridge, very quality contractor.
Yeah.
We're in good hands.
I think there's, again, ways that remember it that will be palpable for hopefully another 100 years as well.
So we'll look forward to seeing you here again from time to time.
Absolutely.